Minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and let me thank the gentleman for yielding and for his leadership on so many issues relating to human rights and genocide and our foreign policy. I also want to thank Chairman Lantos. I want to thank Speaker Pelosi. I want to thank our Majority Leader, Mr. Hoyer. And I want to thank Congressman Don Payne, who for so long was the lone voice in the wilderness speaking out against the horrific genocide that's taking place in Darfur. Also, I want to thank Congressman Smith and all of our Republican colleagues, Congresswoman Ross Layton, our staff, Joan Condon, Pearl Alice, Cristo Santos, all of you who not only have worked so diligently with your expertise and your clarity, but also because you all are committed to the work that we're doing to try to end this genocide. Let me thank our co-sponsors of this resolution. We have over 115 co-sponsors, bipartisan co-sponsors. This is a very important moment for this House of Representatives and for the world. 13 years ago, the world did stand by as nearly 1 million people were slaughtered in the genocide in Rwanda. The best our country could do then, the best we could do, was apologize, and that was after the fact. Many of us swore that another Rwanda would never happen again, would never take place on our watch. But today, Madam Speaker, it is happening again. Nearly 3 years ago, on July 22, 2004, Congress formally declared that genocide was taking place in Darfur. Estimates indicate that nearly 450,000 people now, 450,000 people have been killed, and 2.5 million innocent civilians have been displaced to this date. That is mind-boggling. I witnessed this ongoing tragedy in January of 2005 when I first visited the refugee camps in Chad and in Darfur, led by another leader against this genocide, Congressman Ed Royce. Also with two great humanitarian leaders, Don Cheadle, Academy Award nominee for Hotel Rwanda, and Paul Rusesabagina, who also was a hero, who was in Rwanda and led many people out of that tragedy. In February in 2006, once again under the leadership of our great Speaker Nancy Pelosi, I visited the refugee camps with a bipartisan delegation in Darfur. And just 2 weeks ago, we returned from Darfur again. This was my third visit. Again, a bipartisan congressional delegation under the leadership of our leader, our majority leader, Congressman Steny Hoyer. I say this to say that I have seen this now 3 times, this tragedy, and it is quickly and continually to deteriorate very rapidly. More and more people are dying, regardless of what you hear. We know that more and more people are dying. We heard now that 1,500 to 2,000 a week are dying. And even humanitarian aid workers are at risk. Cars are being hijacked. The day before our delegation arrived, 5 African Union soldiers from Senegal were killed. They were killed. And the head of the African Union, he begged us. He begged us to send more peacekeepers. He begged us to send more logistical support and to help with what they need so that they can provide the civilian protection against this slaughter. Unfortunately, for many Darfurians, the situation still is very, very grim. Now, as part of our visit this time, we also went to Egypt and met with President Mubarak. He indicated that Egypt had deployed 900 troops to help implement the comprehensive peace agreement in southern Sudan. Additionally, Egypt had sent about 150 military observers and police to Darfur and was supporting a field hospital that was serving 200,000 people. These efforts are extremely important, but we urged him to do more and to use his influence with the Sudanese government to help stop the atrocities. News reports last week indicate that Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the League of Arab States and the United Nations were all instrumental in pressuring President Bashir of the Sudan to accept the second phase of the 3-part agreement to implement an African Union United Nations hybrid peacekeeping force. If true, this agreement to deploy the so-called heavy support package would provide for an additional 3,000 peacekeepers, helicopters, and significant logistical and military support for the hybrid force. But as the African Union told us, they need at least 22,000 plus troops. And so whether or not we see this 3,000 force come into Darfur remains to be seen. Past experience, has taught us that we can never take President Bashir at his word. News reports the very next day detailed a United Nations investigation that caught Khartoum disguising military supply planes in United Nations colors in order to supply weapons to their Janjaweed allies. The international community and our friends in the League of Arab States cannot allow this sort of double dealing to take place. We've all got to keep the pressure on Khartoum, and that's why we've got to pass this bipartisan resolution today. The thrust of this resolution is very simple. It calls on the League of Arab States and each member state to be our partners for peace by stepping up their efforts to end the genocide in Darfur. For too long, the world has been silent in this struggle. I remember in my trips to Algeria, meeting with the president of Algeria and a previous visit to Egypt several years ago, that the government officials were very reluctant to call the ongoing atrocities in Darfur genocide, and some even denied that genocide was taking place, but we know that it is. Even just last week, Egypt expressed its opposition to further United Nations sanctions against Sudan, urging that we give President Bashir more time. More time for what? To allow more innocent people. May I have an additional 2 minutes?
The gentlelady, an additional 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I was saying, what do we need more time for? To allow more innocent people to get killed? While it appears today that in some cases those outlooks are changing of some of the Arab states, there is still much more that they can do and we can do. We must demand that President Bashir follow through on the full deployment of the AU-UN hybrid force. And we must urge all parties, the rebels and the government, to end the violence and come to the table to negotiate a political solution. But we cannot and we should not hold a ceasefire declaration hostage to a peace agreement or vice versa. We cannot wait for a peace agreement to stop the slaughter. We must do both at the same time. And we must insist that Darfurians return to their homes, figure out a way so they can get home quickly to their villages and reclaim their lives. Our own efforts to stop this genocide must intensify also. We must pursue divestment to remove all United States funding from any business that is supporting the Sudanese government and the ongoing genocide. And we've got to explore further sanctions and legislation that I know my colleague Congressman Don Payne is working on. Lastly, we must engage with the Chinese to leverage their influence on the Sudanese government and help put a stop to this violence. As the principal buyer of oil from the Sudan, the Chinese have the ability to exert political and financial pressure on President Bashir. We need their help to end the genocide. I salute the faith community and our young people around the country who are organizing and speaking out and working day and night to end this genocide. This week, they're conducting a series of Darfur Days. As they continue to say, not on our watch, we hope that our friends in the Arab world join these young people in saying, not on their watch. Never will this happen again. So in memory of our beloved colleague, may I have an additional 30 seconds? In memory of Congresswoman Melinda McDonald.
Give the gentlewoman an additional 30 seconds.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you very much. I just want to mention that our beloved Congresswoman Juanita Melinda McDonald, who passed this weekend, she worked tirelessly to end this genocide in Darfur. And so I am asking for a strong bipartisan vote on this resolution in her honor, and to make sure that the young people, the men and the women who we have seen and who we know whose lives have been destroyed, and for those who have died, let us say to the entire world, and let us ask our partners for peace in the Arab world to end this genocide now. Thank you.